Extraneous factors to avoid. Dear students, we have been discussing various factors which can possibly spoil our results, and we discussed that we must be making sure that the changes taking place in the dependent variable or variables are only because of the independent variable, right? So we have discussed about the control group contamination, or the the possibility of testing as an extraneous factor. In this session, we are going to talk about some more extraneous factors which could potentially influence our data, and we may not be having the accurate results at the end, right? So we must be avoiding them during our planning and our procedures when we are collecting data, right? The only point is that we must be making sure that whatever is taking place is a change in the dependent variables only because of the independent variable. So that's the ultimate point. So what other points could be extraneous factors? One is the Pygmalion Effect. Pygmalion Effect, if you remember the play of Pygmalion by G.B. Shaw, then you must know that it is something when you are in love with your own creation, your own production, right? So the Pygmalion Effect is that the researcher might be having the perception that the researcher knows the participant's behavior, right? And ultimately, the researcher is going to affect his perception of the behavior of participants, right? So that is going to affect your, your data. And this effect is called the Pygmalion Effect, right? So we would try to make it as objective as possible, right? So maximum objectivity, maximum reliability and validity would be in our data, right? Another possibility is called Hawthorne Effect. Hawthorne Effect is a sort of extraneous factor. When participants behave differently because they know that they are being observed, or they are being tested, or they are being explored, so this awareness that they are the part of the study, they would behave differently. And this might be like a possibility when you want to test a student, and you may be recording from the student, and you have told the student as a participant that you are going to be recorded. So it is going to influence his or her performance, right? Because of the, the awareness that they are being explored and that they are being, tested, right? So that's the possibility which is called a Hawthorne Effect. So in some of the, observation-based studies, in order to have, a very natural setting, a very natural data, as natural as possible, we are required to keep it as secret as possible, right? So that they are not actually falling to this Hawthorne Effect, and our data is as natural as possible. Then another possibility is there as an extraneous factor, and this is called treatment intervention. Treatment intervention is basically a sort of extraneous factor when the participants are treated on a very novel sort of methodology, right? And they are disrupted. They are disrupted because they are not used to that context, right? And therefore their performance is not natural. Let me give you an example that how could we have this possibility of treatment intervention. Treatment intervention is like, for example, you go to a village, right? And there are students of a public government school. They are, inter-level students, but they haven't seen computer. They haven't worked on computer. So you are putting them on computers, right? They would be taken to the computer labs, and they would be working on computers for the first time. So it's a very novel experience for them. And this novelty is going to influence their performance when they are writing down on keyboard. So they may not be coming up with their natural potential, and their data would be contaminated. Similarly, since they are, working on computer for the first time, they would be disrupted. Disrupted because they don't know how to operate a computer, right? So they would be spending a lot of time in looking for the alphabets and then very carefully designing and very carefully performing, right? So that won't be giving us this disruption since they are out of their routine work, their routine school. they would be disrupted. So that's one example of disruption. We could have some other examples of disruption when they are not in natural setting, when they are treated by other than their own teachers, and when they are being tested through any instrument which they didn't go through earlier, right? So that's a possibility which is called treatment intervention. And this treatment intervention is a potential extraneous factor that could affect our results, and we may not have the accurate data. There is one more possibility which is called a cumulative treatment effect. A cumulative treatment effect is particularly a potential extraneous factor in a study where when we have more than one treatment. There are several treatments, and they know that they have been treated, and now they would be treated again, the subjects. So that would ultimately influence their performance, and they would not be giving us natural data. So that is called a cumulative treatment effect. And in order to avoid this extraneous factor of a cumulative treatment effect, we could plan with a counterbalance design when this cumulative treatment effect is diffused, and we are in a position to have as accurate data as possible. Treatment fidelity is another possibility when we have the problem of administering a test or the procedure of the study is exactly as it was planned by the researcher, right? So we are unable to do that in the exact way, and our data is not accurate since it's a requirement that whatever testing is to be done, it is tested in an exact way through exactly the same instrument, might be at exactly the same time, right? So if this exactness is not found and we do not have this accurate data, it's because of the treatment fidelity, right? So we are to collect the data and to administer the test as the part of our study in as exact as possible manner and in a very correct manner, right? We have another possibility as an extraneous factor, and it is the treatment strength-time interaction. Treatment strength-time interaction is that when you want to test your subjects soon after the given treatment, right? So it's a new treatment, they have recently gone through it, so their results are influenced, and there is a very noticeable change in their performance just because of time. So this time is a noticeable factor. We must be taking care of it as well. And if particularly when it is related to teaching methodology, we must know that in order to make sure that the changes in the learners, our subjects, that's only because of the teaching methodology. So we must be giving proper time for teaching, right? For example, some of the experts say that there should be an experimental study, there should be an experimental treatment given to the students for minimum 6 weeks. It is one of the general rules, right? So if you are treating your students for at least 6 weeks, so that there would be, you would be claiming with confidence that the changes which are taking place at the end are because of your teaching methodology. But if you are not teaching for for an appropriate time, you cannot claim that the changes taking place at the end are just because of your teaching methodology, right? So we must be properly giving time for the teaching and for the interventions and for the experiments if we want to claim that our data is accurate and it is pure.